A trained attack dog was released during a police demonstration. When he spotted a man in a wheelchair, he broke formation and charged straight at him. Officers lunged to intervene, fearing the worst, but the footage captured what happened next, and it shocked the entire police department. The rhythmic hum of an electric wheelchair cut through the crisp morning air long before anyone noticed the man guiding it. Nicholas Taylor, former police officer, decorated detective, and paralyzed for the last 3 years, navigated the gravel parking lot with practiced precision. His hands gripped the controls with the same steady confidence that once held his service weapon. The scent of fresh-cut grass, gun oil, and leather drifted across the demonstration field, telling him he'd reached the place. He'd spent weeks debating whether to attend the annual K9 unit demonstration. His heart pounded heavier than the wheelchair's motor. He had faced armed suspects, high-speed chases, and life-threatening situations. Yet somehow, rolling onto these grounds felt harder. Maybe because this time he wasn't confronting danger, he was confronting the life that had been stolen from him by a single bullet. A man's voice approached him, warm but edged with uncertainty. "Nick? Nicholas Taylor? Is that really you?" Nicholas looked up, managing a tight smile. "Officer Mendez, yeah, it's me." "It's great to see you," Mendez replied, awkward energy radiating from his stance. "The demonstration's about to start. You want me to find you a good spot?" Nicholas's jaw tightened slightly. "I can manage. Before we go into details, click subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom, so let me know where you're listening from. Let's begin." Nicholas rolled forward, scattered greetings following him like whispers. Fellow officers nodded respectfully, but their eyes held something he'd grown to recognize, pity mixed with relief that it wasn't them in the chair. He hated that look more than the wheelchair itself. The demonstration field stretched before him, marked with orange cones and training obstacles. In the distance, sharp commands rang out as handlers worked their canine partners through warm-up drills. Nicholas positioned himself near the bleachers, slightly separated from the standing crowd. The morning sun warmed his face, but inside, coldness lingered. A group of younger officers stood nearby, their conversation drifting toward him. "Did you hear? Hunter's up first today. That dog's a legend," one of them said, voice thick with admiration. "Yeah, Justin Harris trained him personally. Perfect record, never missed a takedown." Nicholas's chest tightened. He remembered when he used to talk about canines that way, with pride, with belonging. Now he was just an observer, relegated to the sidelines like broken equipment no one knew what to do with. The field grew quiet as Gracelyn Bailey, the canine coordinator, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending our annual canine tactical demonstration. Today you'll witness the incredible bond between handler and dog and the precision that makes our canine unit one of the finest in the state." Nicholas listened, but his mind drifted. 3 years ago, he would have been out there. 3 years ago, he was somebody. The shooting replayed in fragments. The warehouse raid, the suspect's movement in the shadows, the crack of gunfire, then nothing but ceiling tiles and fluorescent lights in a hospital room. When he finally woke, they told him the damage was permanent. The bullet had severed his spinal cord. He'd never walk again. They called him a hero. They gave him medals, but medals didn't fill the hollow space where purpose used to live. A sharp bark snapped him back to the present. On the field, handlers were bringing out the dogs for demonstration. Nicholas watched, transfixed. German shepherds, Belgian Malinois, each moving with disciplined power. Their handlers commanded them with subtle gestures, and the dogs responded instantly, years of training and trust made visible. He remembered the smell of the canine training facility, the weight of a protective sleeve on his arm during bite drills, the exhilaration of watching a dog take down a suspect with surgical precision. He remembered feeling invincible, part of something larger than himself. Now he just felt small. "Up first," Gracelyn announced, "we have our apprehension demonstration, featuring Hunter, a 3-year German Shepherd with a perfect record. Handler Justin Harris will demonstrate tactical engagement protocols. Nicholas leaned forward slightly as a muscular handler entered the field, a powerful German shepherd at his side. Even from a distance, Nicholas could see the dog's intensity, ears alert, body coiled, eyes locked on his handler with unwavering focus. Something stirred in Nicholas's memory. Hunter. The name felt familiar, like a word on the tip of his tongue. Had he known this dog? Before the shooting? Before everything changed? The dog's head suddenly turned, nostrils flaring as he scanned the crowd. His ears twitched, pivoting like radar searching for a signal. Nicholas felt it, a pull, a recognition trembling through the air. Justin raised his hand. "Hunter, ready!" The dog tensed, muscles bunching. "Release!" Hunter exploded forward, but then, mid-charge, something impossible happened. The dog pivoted sharply, abandoning his target. He was racing, full speed, ears pinned, directly towards Nicholas. "Hunter, halt! Halt!" Justin's voice cracked with panic. Officers surged forward. Someone screamed. But Nicholas didn't move, because as that powerful animal charged towards him, Nicholas saw something in the dog's eyes. Not aggression, recognition. The world seemed to slow as Hunter's powerful body cut across the demonstration field, every muscle working in perfect synchrony. 75 pounds of trained aggression moving with terrifying speed and singular focus. But his target wasn't the padded volunteer waiting at the end of the field. It was Nicholas. "What the hell?" someone shouted behind him. "Get back! Everyone get back!" Hands grabbed at Nicholas's wheelchair, trying to yank him away from the charging animal, but there was no time. Hunter was closing the distance with frightening velocity, his paws barely touching the ground, dirt spraying behind him. Justin Harris sprinted after his canine, face red with exertion and alarm. "Hunter, stand down! Stand down now!" His voice cracked with desperation, the kind of panic that only comes when perfect control shatters in an instant. Other handlers bolted toward the scene, whistles shrieking, commands overlapping in a chorus of chaos. But Hunter ignored them all. Every carefully drilled command, every hour of conditioning, every protocol, gone. The dog had locked onto something and nothing would stop him. Nicholas's hands tightened on his wheelchair's armrests. His training kicked in even through the shock, assess the threat, calculate options, prepare for impact. But his body wouldn't respond the way it used to. He couldn't run, couldn't dodge, couldn't do anything but sit there and watch 75 pounds of elite attack dog bearing down on him. The crowd erupted. Parents grabbed their children. Officers reached for weapons they weren't carrying. Gracelyn Bailey's voice screamed through the microphone. "Clear the area! Clear the area now!" 20 feet. 15. 10. Hunter's eyes never wavered. Dark, intense, burning with something Nicholas couldn't name. Not the cold calculation of a trained attack. Something else. Something almost desperate. Justin dove, trying to intercept his dog, but Hunter was too fast. He swerved around his handler with fluid grace, never breaking stride. Other officers formed a hasty barrier, arms outstretched, but Hunter blew past them like they weren't there. 5 feet. Nicholas's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct told him to move, to fight, to do something. But his legs, his useless, betraying legs, remained still. He was trapped, vulnerable, exactly what he'd feared most since waking up in that hospital bed 3 years ago. 3 feet. Time crystallized. Nicholas could see every detail, the spray of saliva from Hunter's open mouth, the intensity in his amber eyes, the way his ears pinned back, not in aggression, but in something closer to urgency. The dog's trajectory would bring him directly into Nicholas's lap, full force, no hesitation. Officers shouted. Someone screamed his name. 1 foot. Hunter gathered himself for the final leap, muscles coiling like springs. This was it. Nicholas closed his eyes, bracing for impact, for pain, for the inevitable chaos of teeth and fury. And the impact came, but not the way anyone expected, not the way anyone could have predicted. And in that impossible moment, as Hunter's weight settled against Nicholas, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Recognized. Hunter's massive paws hit the ground inches from Nicholas's wheelchair, skidding to a stop with perfect precision. No collision, no attack, no violence. Instead, the powerful German Shepherd lowered his head and gently, impossibly gently, placed it in Nicholas's lap. The tail wagged, slow at first, then faster, sweeping back and forth with unmistakable joy. The field fell silent. Every officer, every handler, every spectator frozen in disbelief. Nicholas stared down at the dog in his lap, his mind struggling to catch up with what his body already knew. His hands moved without conscious thought, fingers finding the soft fur behind Hunter's ears, in a gesture so practiced, so automatic that it could only come from muscle memory. Hunter's eyes closed, a low, contented rumble vibrating through his chest. Not a growl, a sound of pure relief, of recognition, of coming home. "Nick?" Justin Harris approached cautiously, breathless and bewildered. What just happened? Nicholas's throat tightened. His fingers continued their familiar pattern, scratching behind Hunter's ears, along his neck, under his collar. The dog pressed closer, whining softly, nudging Nicholas's hand when he paused. And then it hit him. The memory crashed through the fog of 3 years like lightning. "Charlie Rodriguez's dog," Nicholas whispered, voice cracking. "Charlie Rodriguez. My partner 5 years ago, before he transferred to narcotics. He was Hunter's first handler." Nicholas looked up, his eyes glistening. "I was there when Hunter was still a trainee. I helped Charlie work with him during lunch breaks, after shifts. I was the one who—" His voice caught. Hunter lifted his head, brown eyes searching Nicholas's face with heartbreaking intensity. "I was the one who convinced Charlie to keep him when everyone said Hunter was too anxious to make it through certification." The crowd remained silent, processing. Gracelyn Bailey stepped forward, microphone forgotten in her hand. "That was 5 years ago, Nicholas. Before the shooting, yeah," Nicholas finished. "Hunter would have been barely a year old, just a pup struggling with his training." He stroked the dog's head, marveling. "Charlie and I spent hours with him. I'd wear the bite sleeve, let him practice his holds. He was so eager to please, but so scared of failing." Hunter's tail wagged harder, his entire body wiggling with emotion. He pressed his forehead against Nicholas's chest, whining again, a sound of apology, of longing, of pure, unfiltered connection. "He remembers," Nicholas breathed. "After all this time, through all the training, all the handlers, he remembers me." Justin Harris ran his hand through his hair, stunned. That's impossible. Dogs don't retain memories like that. Not after years, not through that much conditioning." But Gracelyn Bailey knelt beside the wheelchair, watching Hunter's behavior with professional assessment. "Some bonds," she said quietly, "run deeper than training, deeper than protocol. This dog didn't just remember you, Nicholas. He recognized something in you that nobody else could see." Nicholas's vision blurred as tears he'd been holding for 3 years finally broke free. Hunter responded immediately, licking his face, pressing closer, refusing to leave. The dog's message was clear. "You're not alone. I haven't forgotten. I never forgot." Around them, officers lowered their weapons, their panic transforming into awe. Because what they just witnessed wasn't a training failure. It was loyalty that transcended time itself. The moment shattered when Justin Harris stepped forward, his voice sharp with authority. "Hunter, heel, now." Hunter's ears flattened, but he didn't move from Nicholas's lap. The dog's body tensed, torn between obedience and something deeper. "Hunter!" Justin's command cracked like a whip. "Heel!" Reluctantly, painfully, Hunter pulled away from Nicholas, but his eyes never left the man in the wheelchair, and his paws dragged as Justin clipped the lead to his collar. "This demonstration is over," Justin announced to the crowd, his jaw set tight. "Please remain seated while we assess the situation." He turned to Nicholas, voice lower but no less firm. "I don't know what just happened, but Hunter's done for the day, possibly longer." "Wait, what?" Nicholas's hands gripped his wheelchair. "You can't punish him for recognizing someone." "I can and I will." Justin's expression hardened. "This is an active duty canine, not a pet. He abandoned a direct command, broke formation during a tactical demonstration, and charged a civilian. That's 3 violations in under 30 seconds. "I'm not a civilian," Nicholas shot back. "I'm a former officer, and Hunter didn't attack me, he remembered me." "Doesn't matter." A new voice cut through the tension. Luca Perkins, department administrator, strode onto the field with a tablet in hand and authority in his posture. "Protocol is protocol, Officer Taylor, or should I say, former Officer Taylor." Nicholas's jaw clenched at the emphasis. Luca had always been a stickler for rules, the kind of bureaucrat who valued paperwork over people. Hunter is an active-duty canine with a perfect operational record. What we just witnessed was a complete breakdown of discipline. He ignored his handler, disregarded commands, and demonstrated preferential behavior toward a specific individual. That's textbook unreliability. "That's textbook loyalty," Nicholas countered, heat rising in his voice. Hunter recognized someone from his past who helped train him. That's not unreliability, that's memory and bond. Gracelyn Bailey stepped between them, her tone diplomatic. "Luca, Nicholas has a point. Hunter's response wasn't aggression, it was recognition. There's a difference." "The outcome is the same," Luca tapped his tablet. "Active canines cannot show preference for individuals outside their handler relationship. It compromises their effectiveness and creates liability. What if Hunter had been on a real operation? What if he'd abandoned his duty to chase after someone he recognized?" He looked directly at Nicholas. "Your connection with this dog, while touching, is a security risk." "So you're going to retire him?" Nicholas's voice dropped dangerously low. "Punish a dog for having a memory?" "I'm going to have him evaluated," Luca corrected. "Standard protocol for any canine showing behavioral irregularities." He gestured to Justin. "Pull all security footage from today's demonstration. I want timestamps, angles, every detail of Hunter's behavior from the moment he entered the field." Justin nodded reluctantly, though his expression suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with the direction this was taking. "Hunter's been off lately, since his current handler transferred. More anxious, less focused during drills." "See?" Lucas seized at this. "Pre-existing behavioral issues. Today's incident just confirms what we suspected." "Or," Gracelyn interjected carefully, "Hunter needs stability, connection, maybe even—" "No." Luca's voice went cold. "We're not assigning an active-duty canine to a retired, disabled officer. It's unprecedented, it's against policy, and it's not happening." Nicholas felt the words like a physical blow. Retired, disabled, as if his wheelchair erased everything he'd ever contributed. Hunter whined from Justin's side, straining against the lead toward Nicholas. The sound carried across the field, raw, pleading, desperate. "I'm going to help you," Nicholas said quietly, dangerously. "Review the footage." Luca met his gaze. "We'll see what the footage shows. Until then, Hunter is suspended from active duty pending evaluation." As Justin led the protesting dog away, Hunter looked back one last time, his eyes locked with Nicholas's, and Nicholas made a silent promise: "I won't let them take this away from you." Nicholas rolled through the canine facility doors 2 days later, determination overriding the anxiety that had kept him away from police buildings for 3 years. The reception area smelled of coffee and wet dog, sounds of barking echoing from the kennels beyond. A young officer at the desk looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "Officer Taylor? Sir, can I help you?" "I'm here to see Gracelyn Bailey." "Do you have an appointment?" "No." Nicholas met her gaze steadily. "But tell her it's about Hunter." 5 minutes later, Gracelyn emerged from the back offices, her expression unreadable. "Nicholas, I wondered if you'd show up." She gestured toward a conference room. "Come on." The room was small, functional, with a wall of windows overlooking the training yard. Nicholas positioned his wheelchair at the table, while Gracelyn closed the door behind them. "They're reviewing the footage today," she said without preamble. "Luca already made his mind. He wants Hunter retired." "On what grounds?" Nicholas asked. "Unreliability, emotional attachment compromising operational effectiveness. Take your pick."
Gracelyn sank into a chair, exhaustion evident in her posture. The truth is, Luca's been looking for a reason to pull Hunter for weeks. Nicholas leaned forward. What do you mean? Gracelyn hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Hunter's current handler, Marcus Webb, was transferred to another district 3 months ago. Budget cuts, reorganization, the usual bureaucratic mess. Since then, Hunter's been reassigned to Justin for temporary handling, but she paused. He's not the same dog. What's changed? He's anxious during drills, hesitant on commands. Nothing dramatic, nothing that affects his work in the field, but enough that people notice. Gracelyn's voice softened. Dogs bond with their handlers, Nicholas, you know that. When Marcus left, Hunter lost his anchor. He's been drifting ever since. And then he saw me. And then he saw you, Gracelyn confirmed. Someone from your past, someone who represented stability when he was young and learning. Of course he reacted. Nicholas absorbed this, pieces clicking into place. So this isn't about what happened at the demonstration. This is Luca using it as an excuse to retire a dog he already considers problematic. Exactly. Gracelyn crossed her arms. And once Hunter's retired, he'll sit in a kennel for months waiting for adoption. Or worse, if they determine he's too unreliable for civilian life. She didn't finish the sentence.
The implication hung heavy in the air. Nicholas's hands tightened on his wheelchair's armrests. They'd put him down. Not immediately, but eventually, if no one claims him and his anxiety gets worse. Gracelyn shook her head. I've seen it happen. Something ignited in Nicholas's chest, something he hadn't felt since before the shooting. Purpose, direction, the need to fight for something beyond himself. What does Hunter need? He asked. Gracelyn looked at him carefully. Honestly, stability, connection, someone who understands him and doesn't see his recognition response as a flaw, but as proof of his capacity for loyalty. Someone like me. Nicholas. Gracelyn's tone turned cautious. What you're thinking, it's not possible. Department policy clearly states, I don't care about policy. Nicholas's voice carried the weight of 3 years' worth of helplessness, finally finding an outlet. That dog remembers me. He trusts me, and I'm not going to let bureaucratic protocol destroy him because he had the audacity to show loyalty. Gracelyn studied him for a long moment. You're serious about this? Dead serious. Nicholas held her gaze. For 3 years, I felt useless, like my service ended the moment that bullet hit my spine. But Hunter, he doesn't see a wheelchair. He sees someone he remembers, someone he trusts. His voice cracked slightly. Let me fight for him, Gracelyn, please. Gracelyn was quiet, then slowly nodded. The footage review is tomorrow at 10. If you want to advocate for Hunter, that's your chance. She leaned forward. But Nicholas, you need to understand, Luca won't make this easy. He'll use every regulation, every protocol, every excuse to shut you down. Let him try. Nicholas straightened in his wheelchair, feeling something he thought he'd lost forever. He felt like a cop again. The conference room was packed when Nicholas arrived. Luca Perkins sat at the head of the table, a tablet glowing in front of him. Justin Harris occupied the seat to his right, arms crossed defensively. Gracelyn Bailey stood near the projection screen, remote control in hand. 3 other administrators Nicholas didn't recognize filled the remaining chairs. Luca barely glanced up when Nicholas wheeled through the door. Officer Taylor, I wasn't aware you'd been invited to this review. I wasn't, Nicholas replied evenly, but since this concerns a dog I have history with, I figured I should be here. This is a departmental matter. Then let's get to it, Gracelyn interrupted, her tone professional but firm. We're here to review security footage from the demonstration. Multiple angles, full timeline. She dimmed the lights and clicked the remote. The screen flickered to life, showing an aerial view of the demonstration field. Nicholas could see himself entering the frame from the parking lot, wheelchair navigating the gravel path. The timestamp read 9:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Hunter's release. Watch the kennels, Gracelyn said quietly. Nicholas leaned forward. In the bottom corner of the screen, handlers were preparing the canines for demonstration. Hunter sat beside Justin, perfectly disciplined. But then as Nicholas's wheelchair came into view crossing the field, Hunter's head turned sharply. There, pause the footage. 9:47:23. Hunter notices the wheelchair.
Luca waved dismissively. Dogs notice movement. That's not unusual. Keep watching. Graceland resumed playback. For the next 12 minutes, his handlers moved dogs into position and the crowd gathered. Hunter's attention kept drifting. His head would turn toward Nicholas's position, ears pivoting, nose working the air. Even when Justin gave commands, Hunter's responses came with a fractional delay, his focus divided. He's tracking. The whole time he's tracking me. Justin shifted uncomfortably. I noticed he was distracted during warm-up. I thought he was just off his game. Graceland switched camera angles. This view showed Nicholas from the side, positioned at the edge of the crowd. Now watch Hunter's release. The footage showed Justin giving the command, Hunter exploding forward toward the padded volunteer, but 3 strides in, Hunter's trajectory shifted. It wasn't a sudden pivot, it was a calculated adjustment, fluid and purposeful. "Freeze it there," one of the administrators said. "Go frame by frame." Graceland obliged. In slow motion, Hunter's body language became crystal clear. His ears weren't pinned back in aggression. They were forward, alert, assessing. His mouth wasn't open for attack. It was closed, controlled. His approach wasn't the reckless charge of an out-of-control animal. It was the deliberate movement of a dog protecting something vulnerable. "Look at his eyes," Nicholas said, voice tight with emotion. "He's not hunting, he's guarding." Graceland zoomed in on Hunter's face. Even in freeze frame, the dog's expression was unmistakable. Concern, urgency, recognition. "When he reaches Nicholas," Graceland narrated, advancing the footage, "watch his deceleration." Hunter's powerful legs absorbed momentum with perfect precision, transitioning from full sprint to complete stop without collision. That's not loss of control, that's extraordinary control. The room fell silent as they watched Hunter gently place his head in Nicholas's lap, the dog's tail wagging, body relaxed, every line of his posture screaming contentment and relief. Luca cleared his throat. Regardless of his intentions, Hunter abandoned a direct command. He broke protocol to protect what he perceived as a vulnerable pack member. That's not a failure of training, that's successful training meeting deeper instinct. "It's unreliability," Luca insisted. "What if this happens in the field? What if Hunter decides someone else needs protecting and abandons his actual mission?" "Then he saves a life," Nicholas said quietly. "Isn't that what police dogs are supposed to do?" Justin rubbed his jaw, clearly conflicted. "I've worked with Hunter for 3 months. He's never shown aggression toward civilians, never hesitated on a real call. This is the only time he's deviated from command, and it was for this. One deviation is one too many," Lucas stated flatly. "My recommendation stands. Hunter should be retired from active duty immediately." "Your recommendation is wrong," Nicholas's voice cut through the room with unexpected force. "That footage doesn't show an unreliable dog. It shows a dog with the intelligence to assess situations beyond simple commands. It shows loyalty that transcends training. And if you retire him for that, you're not protecting the department, you're punishing excellence." Luca's eyes narrowed. "Officer Taylor, I understand you have an emotional connection to this animal, but this has nothing to do with emotion," Nicholas interrupted. "This has everything to do with recognizing value when you see it. Hunter didn't fail. You're just using the wrong metrics to measure success." The silence that followed was heavy, charged. Finally, Graceland spoke. "I propose a compromise."
Graceland's proposal hung in the air like a challenge. One more demonstration. Nicholas presents as a controlled variable. If Hunter can maintain discipline and complete his tasks with Nicholas in proximity, we prove his response wasn't unreliability. It was specific recognition that won't interfere with operational duty. Luca's jaw tightened. "And if he fails? Then I'll sign the retirement papers myself," Graceland said quietly. "But he deserves the chance to prove himself." The administrators exchanged glances. Justin leaned back in his chair, considering. Finally, Luca nodded curtly. "Fine. One demonstration, controlled conditions, full documentation." He looked directly at Nicholas. "But if Hunter shows even a hint of the same behavior, this conversation is over." 3 days later, Nicholas returned to the demonstration grounds. This time, the field was nearly empty, just essential personnel and administrators. No crowd, no fanfare, just clinical observation. The morning air felt heavier somehow, weighted with consequence. Gracelyn met him at the entrance. "Are you ready for this?" "No," Nicholas admitted, gripping his wheelchair controls tighter than necessary. "What if my being here ruins his chance? What if Hunter can't help himself and—" "Then we deal with it," Gracelyn cut him off gently. "But I believe in this dog, Nicholas, and I believe in you." Justin approached with Hunter on the lead. The German Shepherd's eyes locked onto Nicholas immediately, ears perking forward, tail beginning to wag. But Justin's command was sharp. "Hunter, focus." The dog's attention snapped back to his handler, though his body remained tense with awareness. "We'll run 3 scenarios," Luca announced from his position beside the camera crew. "Basic obedience, suspect apprehension, and off-leash recall. Hunter must perform at or above standard in all 3. Officer Taylor will remain in clear sight throughout." He paused meaningfully. "Any deviation results in immediate failure." Nicholas's stomach nodded. The pressure on Hunter was immense. Perform perfectly while the one person he'd bonded with sat 30 feet away. It felt cruel. The first test began. Justin commanded Hunter through a series of positions. Sit, down, stay, heel. Hunter complied flawlessly, movements crisp and precise, but Nicholas could see the tension in Hunter's body, the way his ears kept twitching toward Nicholas's position, even as he maintained discipline. "Good," Luca muttered, making notes. Continuing from scenario 2. A volunteer in a padded suit entered the field, playing the role of fleeing suspect. Justin released Hunter with a sharp command. The dog exploded forward with the same terrifying speed Nicholas remembered from the first demonstration. But this time, Hunter's trajectory never wavered. He hit the padded volunteer perfectly, bringing him down with textbook form. Nicholas released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Excellent execution," one of the administrators noted. "No hesitation, no deviation." Justin called Hunter back. The dog returned immediately, sitting at his handler's side with rigid discipline. But Nicholas saw it. The slight tremor in Hunter's haunches, the way his eyes kept darting toward Nicholas's position, even as he maintained discipline. "He's struggling," Nicholas said quietly to Gracelyn. "He's succeeding," she corrected. "There's a difference." The final test was the hardest. Justin would release Hunter off-leash for a distance recall, sending the dog 50 yards away, then calling him back past Nicholas's position without stopping. It was a test of focus, discipline, and trust. "This is where he'll fail," Luca predicted, almost smugly. "No way he passes Officer Taylor without stopping." Justin walked Hunter to the far end of the field. The dog kept looking back, clearly reluctant to increase the distance from Nicholas. Finally, Justin removed the lead and commanded, "Hunter, stay." The German Shepherd sat, every muscle coiled with tension. 50 yards separated him from his handler, and Nicholas sat directly in the path between them. Justin raised his hand. "Hunter, come." The dog launched forward, powerful legs eating up the distance. 40 yards, 30, 20. Nicholas's section loomed ahead. Hunter's pace didn't slow, but his head turned slightly, eyes finding Nicholas for a fraction of a second. "Don't stop," Nicholas whispered under his breath. "Please don't stop." 10 yards from Nicholas's wheelchair, Hunter's stride faltered. Just for a moment, just enough for everyone to notice. Luca leaned forward, pen poised over his tablet. Hunter's body screamed conflict, every instinct demanding he veered toward Nicholas, check on him, confirm his safety. But Justin's command echoed across the field. "Come." And Hunter, with what looked like physical pain, stayed his course. He ran past Nicholas, close enough that Nicholas could have reached out and touched him, and continued straight to Justin's side. The field erupted in exhales. "Perfect recall," Gracelyn said, voice thick with emotion, under extraordinary distraction. Justin knelt beside Hunter, stroking his head. The dog trembled, his eyes still locked on Nicholas across the field, but he'd done it. He'd proven his discipline exceeded his desire. Lucas set down his pen slowly.
I'll be damned. The administrators were gathering their notes, Luca reluctantly preparing to acknowledge Hunter's success, when the radio on Graceland's hip crackled with urgent static. All units, be advised, suspect fleeing on foot from the Fletcher Street Warrant Service, armed and dangerous, heading east toward the canine facility grounds. Everyone froze. Justin's hand went to his weapon. Graceland immediately keyed her radio. Copy that. We have personnel on the demonstration field, requesting backup and... The chain-link fence at the eastern perimeter exploded inward as a figure crashed through, wild-eyed and desperate. The man was mid-30s, wearing a torn jacket, one hand clutching his side where blood seeped through his shirt, the other gripped a pistol. "Nobody move," he screamed, swinging the weapon in frantic arcs. "I'll swear, I'll shoot, I swear to God." His eyes scanned the nearly empty field, landing on the scattered personnel. Officers began drawing weapons, forming a perimeter, but the suspect was cornered, bleeding, panicking, the most dangerous combination possible. Then his gaze locked onto Nicholas, alone, separated from the others, in a wheelchair, vulnerable. The suspect's expression shifted, predatory calculation cutting through the panic. He moved before anyone could react, crossing the distance in desperate strides. His arm wrapped around Nicholas from behind, the gun pressed cold against Nicholas's temple. "Stay back." The suspect used the wheelchair as a shield, crouching behind it. "I'll kill him. One step closer and he's dead." Nicholas's heart slammed against his ribs, but his training kicked in immediately. Don't panic, assess, calculate. His hands remained visible on the wheelchair's armrests, non-threatening. The gun barrel pressed harder against his skull. "Drop your weapons," he screamed at the officers. "All of you, now."
Justin's weapon remained trained on the suspect, but there was no clear shot. The man had positioned himself perfectly behind Nicholas's chair, using it as cover. "You don't want to do this. Let him go and we can—" "Shut up! Just shut up!" The suspect's voice cracked with desperation. Blood dripped from his side wound onto Nicholas's shoulder. "I need a car. Get me a car or he dies." Officers spread out, trying to find angles, but the suspect adjusted constantly, keeping Nicholas between himself and every weapon. Graceland spoke urgently into her radio, calling for negotiators, for backup, for options they didn't have time to wait for. Hunter stood rigid beside Justin, every muscle locked in controlled fury. A low growl rumbled from his chest, not the playful sound from earlier, but something primal and dangerous. The dog understood the threat. He understood Nicholas was in danger, but he was waiting, body coiled like a spring, eyes locked on the suspect with laser focus. Nicholas forced himself to breathe slowly, despite the gun against his head. His peripheral vision caught Hunter's stance and saw the way the dog was tracking every micro-movement, and suddenly, Nicholas understood. Hunter wasn't just waiting for Justin's command, he was waiting for Nicholas's. The suspect's grip tightened on the gun, his breathing erratic. "I'm counting to 3. If I don't see weapons on the ground, he's dead. 1. Nicholas's mind raced. The suspect was positioned behind and to his left, crouched low to use the wheelchair as maximum cover. Standard takedown angles wouldn't work. Any shot risked hitting Nicholas. But there was one approach, one angle the suspect couldn't defend because he'd never expect it. Low, fast, from the right side where his wounded body couldn't pivot quickly. 2. Nicholas caught Hunter's gaze across 15 feet of open ground. The dog's ears pivoted forward, body tensing with recognition. Could Hunter remember? Would he trust a signal from this position, under this pressure? There was no time to second guess. Nicholas made his decision. His right hand shifted on the armrest, a movement so subtle it looked like nervous trembling. 3 fingers extended, then curved downward, a tap against the metal. The old signal. Protect and disarm, low approach. Hunter's entire body changed instantly. His growl was cut off, his stance shifted to a crouch. Justin noticed, his eyes widening. "Nicholas, what are you—" 3, that's it, he's— The suspect's finger started to squeeze the trigger. Hunter exploded forward, not the charge from the demonstration. This was pure, controlled aggression, low, fast, angled to come from the suspect's weak side. The German Shepherd covered the ground like a missile, using the wheelchair itself as visual cover until the last possible second.
The suspect caught movement in his peripheral vision and tried to swing the gun toward Hunter, but his wounded side betrayed him. He couldn't pivot fast enough. His grip on Nicholas loosened as he turned. "Now!" Nicholas shouted, dropping his weight and grabbing the wheelchair's brake, locking it in place. Hunter's jaws clamped onto the suspect's gun arm with surgical precision. The man screamed, his body jerking backward away from Nicholas. The gun discharged into the air, one deafening crack, then tumbled from his grip. His hunter's weight drove him to the ground. "Go! Go! Go!" Nicholas commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never stopped being a cop. Officers surged forward from angles Nicholas had calculated they could safely use. Two tackled the suspect, his hunter released and immediately repositioned, not retreating, but placing himself directly between the threat and Nicholas's wheelchair. The entire sequence took less than 4 seconds. Silence fell across the field, broken only by the suspect's groans as officers secured him in handcuffs. Paramedics rushed forward to treat the gunshot wound in his side and the bite wounds on his arm. Hunter trotted back to Nicholas, circling the wheelchair once to check for injuries, then sat beside it. His body still vibrated with protective energy, but his tail wagged once. Message received and executed. Nicholas's hand shook as adrenaline flooded his system. He reached down, fingers finding Hunter's fur, grounding himself in the solid reality of the dog beside him. "Good boy," he whispered, voice cracking. "Such a good boy." Luca stood frozen, his tablet hanging forgotten in his hand. His face had gone pale. "That dog just, from that position, with a gun to your head," responded to a 5-year-old hand signal. Gracelyn finished, her voice filled with awe and something close to tears. Under lethal pressure from a handler he hasn't worked with since he was a puppy. Justin approached slowly, holstering his weapon. He stared at Nicholas, then at Hunter, then back at Nicholas. "You coordinated that entire response from your wheelchair. You saw the angles we couldn't see from standing. You knew exactly where Hunter needed to come from." He shook his head in disbelief. "That was the most controlled tactical response I've ever witnessed." Nicholas was still trying to catch his breath, the reality of how close he'd come to dying finally hitting him. But Hunter pressed closer, warm and solid and undeniably real. The dog had trusted him completely, had remembered, had executed perfectly. "We're still a team," Nicholas said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Hunter's tail thumped against the ground in agreement. One of the administrators approached, radio in hand. "Dispatch wants a full report. They're calling it a textbook resolution." He paused, looking at Nicholas with newfound respect. "They're also asking who coordinated the tactical response." Gracelyn stepped forward, her voice firm. "Officer Nicholas Taylor coordinated, from his wheelchair, using his canine partner." She looked directly at Luca. "I believe that settles the question of whether this partnership works." Luca slowly set down his tablet. He walked over to Nicholas, and for a long moment just looked at him. Then he extended his hand. "I was wrong, Officer Taylor. About Hunter, about you, about what's possible." His grip was firm when Nicholas took his. "That was exceptional police work." Nicholas managed a shaky smile. "Just doing what needed to be done." "No," Justin said, joining them. "You did what standing officers couldn't do. You saw what we missed, and you trusted a bond everyone said didn't exist." He crouched beside Hunter, running his hands over the dog to check for injuries. "This partnership isn't just viable, it's essential." Hunter leaned into both their touches, finally relaxing now that the threat was neutralized and Nicholas was safe.
As paramedics approached to check Nicholas for injuries, Gracelyn pulled out her phone. The security cameras caught everything, every second. She looked up, eyes bright. "Nicholas, this changes everything, not just for you and Hunter, for every injured officer who thought their service ended." Nicholas looked down at Hunter, at the dog who'd remembered him, trusted him, and just saved his life. The dog who'd shown him that partnership transcends physical ability. "Yeah," Nicholas said softly, stroking Hunter's ears. "I think it does." The aftermath unfolded in controlled chaos. Paramedics treated the suspect's arm and gunshot wound, while officers secured him in handcuffs. And in the center of it all, Nicholas sat in his wheelchair with Hunter pressed against his side, both of them breathing hard from the adrenaline surge. Luca approached slowly, his expression unreadable. He looked at Nicholas, then at Hunter, then at the security cameras that had captured everything. "That signal," he said quietly, "where did that come from?" "Charlie Rodriguez and I developed it years ago, before the department's standardized protocols. We thought Hunter had forgotten." "He didn't forget you," Graceland said, joining them. "Either of you." Justin crouched beside Hunter, running his hands over the dog to check for injuries. That was the most controlled takedown I've ever seen. He knew exactly where to bite, exactly how much pressure to apply, and he positioned himself to protect you during the entire sequence. He looked up at Nicholas with something close to respect. "How did you know he'd remember?" "I didn't," Nicholas admitted. "I just knew we were out of options." Luca was silent for a long moment. Then he did something Nicholas never expected. He extended his hand. "I was wrong, Officer Taylor, about Hunter, about you." He paused. "About what's possible." The security footage went viral within 48 hours. Not to the public, the department kept it internal, but across every law enforcement network in the state. Tactical teams studied the sequence, canine units analyzed Hunter's approach, and administrators who'd never considered alternative partnerships suddenly found themselves asking questions. 3 months later, Nicholas stood, or rather sat, before a room full of brass and media at the police department's commendation ceremony. Hunter sat beside his wheelchair wearing a new vest that read Canine Tactical Consultant across the side. Chief Morrison presented them both with medals of valor. What we witnessed 3 months ago challenged everything we thought we knew about canine partnerships. Officer Nicholas Taylor and Hunter proved that the strongest bonds aren't built on proximity or conventional ability. They're built on trust, recognition, and mutual respect. The applause was thunderous, but Nicholas barely heard it. His attention was at the back of the room, where a group of injured officers sat, some in wheelchairs, some with prosthetics, all wearing the same expression he'd carried for 3 years. The look of people who believed their service had ended. When the chief stepped back, Nicholas wheeled forward to the microphone. Hunter moved with him, perfectly synchronized. 3 years ago, Nicholas began, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. 3 years ago, I woke up in a hospital bed and learned I'd never walk again. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive. My fellow officers called me a hero, but all I felt was finished. He paused, one hand dropping to Hunter's head. The dog leaned into his touch. This dog remembered me when protocol said he shouldn't. He trusted me when policy said it was impossible. And when a life was on the line, he responded to a partnership everyone claimed didn't exist. Nicholas looked directly at the injured officers in the back. Hunter didn't see my wheelchair. He saw his partner, and that partnership saved a life. Someone in the audience wiped their eyes. Nicholas continued, I'm standing here today, sitting here, to tell every injured officer in this room that your service doesn't end because your body changed. It only transforms. He gestured to Hunter. There's always a way to serve. You just have to find your new position. The room erupted in applause, but Nicholas wasn't finished. He looked at Luca, at Justin, at Graceland. The department created a new position for me. Canine Tactical Consultant. I work with handlers, analyze approaches, coordinate responses from perspectives standing officers can't access, and I do it with the best partner I could ask for. Hunter stood, pressing his shoulder against Nicholas's wheelchair in a gesture that had become their signature. Mutual support, mutual strength. So to anyone who thinks their injury ended their story, it didn't. It just started a new chapter. And sometimes those new chapters are exactly what the world needs. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Officers approached afterwards, some in tears, others asking questions about the new consulting program Graceland was developing. Injured veterans wanted to know if they could work with canines too. Handlers asked about unconventional partnerships.
But the moment that mattered most came later, in the quiet of the parking lot. Nicholas sat in his wheelchair beside his modified van, Hunter waiting patiently as he prepared to load up. Justin approached, hesitant. "Nick, I owe you an apology. I thought Hunter's connection to you was a liability. I was wrong." Nicholas shook his head. "You were protecting your canine. I respect that. Still, he's better with you than he ever was with me, like he's finally where he belongs. Actually, the department approved my request. I'm transferring to patrol. Hunter's officially yours now, full-time." Nicholas's breath caught. "Justin, you don't have to." "Yeah, I do, because that dog was never really mine. He was always waiting for you to come back." After Justin left, Nicholas sat quietly with Hunter in the fading sunlight. The dog rested his head on Nicholas's lap, eyes half closed in contentment. "You saved me, boy," Nicholas whispered. "When I thought there was nothing left, you showed me I was wrong." Hunter's tail wagged slowly, a gesture of simple truth. "You saved me, too." Together, they weren't broken pieces trying to function. They were a complete team, redefined, reimagined, and exactly where they belonged. Finally, home.
Thank you for staying with us till the end of this story. I'm sure you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to get more interesting videos like this.